Hi, I'd like to introduce Angelique, who is an MSW graduate of 2016 of the Tulane School of Social Work, who now is an integral part in Innocence Project New Orleans. And we'd like to discuss how her time at Tulane influenced what she does now. And I'd really like to hear how it's all come together where she's at now. So could you maybe tell us about your time at Tulane and how, if you can, it led to where you're at now?
Sure. So my entire professional career has been working in the legal field, but as a non-lawyer. So around 2014, I'd been working as a mitigation specialist for about 4 years, which means I was investigating death penalty cases. But I came into it without any sort of formal training in mental health. A lot of it was all, I went to trainings and did a lot of reading and did all of the research that I could, but there wasn't any sort of formalized program I had taken. And I was realizing that there were a lot of gaps in my knowledge base, right? And that my clients deserve better, frankly. So I took a little bit of time away from it. I came to Tulane and I actually ended up learning a lot more than I expected. So now I work at Innocence Project New Orleans. I do reentry planning and support work for our clients who have been exonerated after serving 9 to 45 years in prisons for crimes they didn't commit. And we really do pick up on pieces from all sorts of different aspects of social work in this field at this point.
So very interesting you bring that up. So during my master's program, many, many years ago, I don't want to say how long, one of my favorite classes that I didn't think it was going to be one that I enjoy was taught by a former judge who had a master's in social work. Mm-hmm. And they really taught us about this linkage between the two professions. Yep. So I'm curious, during your MSW program, mm-hmm. did you do your field internship, which all our students do, mm-hmm. Serving the communities? So what was your field internship and how did that play in your interests and where you're at today?
Yeah, I did my field placement at the Center for Restorative Approaches, which was, first of all, a fantastic placement. But we did restorative justice work for primarily folks in Orleans and Jefferson Parish public schools. So a lot of it was figuring out what does restorative justice look like in that context. And I also worked with them on putting together restorative justice programs for the juvenile justice system as well. So it was interesting for me as somebody who had never in my life worked with juveniles or children. That was the majority of my field placement. And it really has come full circle. We use restorative circles with our clients. We use reentry mediation is quickly becoming one of these fields. It's really important for folks who are coming home from prisons. So you end up finding crossovers in ways that you wouldn't expect. I think having that sort of like broad knowledge base that you get from the program is really helpful. You get the clinical side, you get the policy side. I think a lot of folks coming into MSW programs assume that they know, right off the bat, oh, well, I'm not a clinical person, I'm a policy person, or the reverse. But what I saw was a lot of folks ended up finding that, one, there's not just two separate tracks, right? There's not just clinical work or policy work, that they're interrelated, and having that exposure to both of them is really important for actually being an effective advocate for your clients in this city.
So, wow, that's great work. Could you tell us, a lot of people have heard the term Innocent Project and they think of the national organization.
Sure.
And I know they're regional and state-based. So could you tell us about Innocence Project New Orleans and what the project is about, but also what you do specifically and how your work at Tulane has influenced what you do?
Sure. So Innocence Project New Orleans is a separate, nonprofit organization based in New Orleans. We have 15 employees. We've freed 36 wrongfully convicted people. Our longest serving client had served 45 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. So I was the first full-time social worker brought into IPNO, and I came sort of pretty late in the organization's development. But I think that the reason why I was brought in and the reason why it's been a really important connection to have social work in this office is we have clients who are coming home who literally have been incarcerated since before the internet was created, right? And then somebody tosses a smartphone at them and says like, here you go, good luck, or is trying to navigate stores, is trying to navigate banking, is trying to navigate finding housing. is trying to navigate how to interact with your family when you've been gone for so long and you've been in such a different situation. So the lawyers are really supportive of my work, which is great. We also have a new project where we work with folks who have been, call it the Unjust Punishment Project. So we're working with people who've been essentially sentenced to decades in prison or life for nonviolent drug convictions, like marijuana possession. And so we're working with those folks coming home as well. So it's kind of a mix of different things. It's supporting our folks while they are incarcerated, however they want, whether that means sending books, whether that means doing more clinical services, whether that means just making sure that their families are able to visit them. And then once they're coming home, we really cover the whole spectrum of life, right? Everything from housing to employment to clinical services to trauma awareness, coping skills, anything they need.
Well, it's amazing that I don't think the general public would understand the key role social workers play, especially when you describe someone that had been incarcerated wrongfully, but had been in that situation. Yeah. And you learn it's a whole nother society behind bars.
Yes.
And I don't think we discuss enough. Everyone's joyful someone's been exonerated. Mm-hmm. 45 years of their lives have been changed dramatically with trauma and all the other things built in. I don't think we talk enough about the role of reentry. How do you come out of a system, a very institutionalized system for 10, 20, 40 years? How do you see social work and your role working with reentry, and how difficult is it? So we can learn a little bit better about that.
Yeah, so every client is different, right? And we have clients who come home and who've adjusted really quickly and who own their own businesses and have families and have really established themselves. And we also have clients who really struggle a lot. I think that what you see in the media a lot are these really beautiful, family reunions and somebody walking out of prison, and it's fantastic and so exciting and so much possibility. But what you don't see is 3 months later when that person suddenly realizes, oh, the most support I'm ever going to get from the state of Louisiana is possibly getting $25,000 a year for up to 10 years if I can get them to agree to compensation for me. I need to get a job. I need medical care. I need to figure out how to engage with my children who were, in utero when I was incarcerated. So the entire range of changes that come from prison to the outside world is pretty extraordinary. I find our clients really inspiring in a lot of ways, but I think that that language can be a little bit disempowering in and of itself, right? Because we say, oh, like it's so, so wonderful, so uplifting, so fantastic. It's like, no, this is a crime against humanity that's occurred. These are people who have survived essentially a war crime. And part of what we are trying to figure out is, how do we make sure that our clients' full stories are told, that they're able to really tell not just, oh, I'm so happy to be home, this is great, but also, here are the ways that this has changed who I am. Here are the ways that this has changed my family's situations in life. Here's the things that I've missed out on. Here's the things that I've had to do in order to survive. And really making sure that it's that full story and not just that, beautiful little clip that plays on the news.
No, I think that's a very important point. Everything that you've said, we really focus on those joyous clips, that 30 seconds on the news. And I find it striking whenever we see these interviews or you read about someone that's been wrongly convicted and been behind bars for 20, 30, 40 years, you really get a sense of hope. And often it just baffles me and other folks that I talk to that deal in trauma and as social workers, we hear a lot of things. So we know what people go through, but it really is just out of the range of understanding is the hope. How are you in such a hopeless situation for that many years and never lose hope? That just is awe-inspiring. And how do you work with clients that are in that situation? And where do you see they draw that resilience from? Because it's beyond resilience. I mean, that is just an amazing skill. I don't know if it's developed. I don't know if it's learned, but I'm sure you play a key role in working with clients.
And I think the idea that, folks never lose hope is actually not entirely correct. I think that we see plenty of periods of time where people really do feel hopeless and are ready to sort of give up or, just sort of throw up their hands and they say, you know, the state of Louisiana is never going to free me. The state of Louisiana is going to keep me locked in this prison. They don't care. They don't care that I'm innocent. Once I'm here, they don't care. And so part of our work is working through those periods of time there, and also being very clear that those are normal feelings to have, that you don't have to be a superhero. You're not expected to be, you know, fully without anger and fully without, you know, fear and frustrations, that you're allowed to have that full spectrum of human emotions. Like, that is part of life, and that you are not expected to be just this superhero taking charge and, you know, inspiring others. That this is a horrific tragedy that's occurred to you, and you're allowed to feel that.
So how people often see the final work that Innocence Project New Orleans is doing, or the outcomes. How does the Innocence Project New Orleans get connected with someone who's incarcerated? How does that first connection begin? Is it a review of cases? Is it a letter, someone reaching out? How does that work?
Sure, and I know I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but we have thousands and thousands of cases backlogged that we would like to review that we haven't had a chance to fully review yet. Again, small staff, but our theme actually for our fundraiser this year was it all starts with a letter. Every intake that we do begins with a letter from somebody who is incarcerated, and that letter might just say, you know, please send me an application, or it might really go into full detail, like, here are the things that I've already tried, here are the people that I've already reached out to, you know, nobody is listening to me, can you help me? And so we get those letters. We have a case intake manager who essentially, you know, knows more about DNA than just about anybody I've ever met, reviews cases through DNA, but also reviews cases for the kind of the harder non-DNA cases, right? Not every case has DNA. Sometimes we have fingerprints, sometimes we have, you know, witness misidentification. Very often we have police misconduct and prosecutorial misconduct, but it's really kind of the slow process of digging through just, you know, years and years and years and years of archives of data, trying to figure out what happened that this person was wrongfully incarcerated, and how can we prove that, right? There's lots of people who are in prison right now who we're fairly confident are innocent, but we just can't prove it. Either, you know, the evidence was destroyed, you know, which can happen within 5 years of somebody being incarcerated. And then when they're trying to get help 10 years later, sorry, you know, we destroyed that evidence kit. I think that that's probably the hardest bit for most of the folks in the office, is just knowing that there's a lot of people that we would like to help who are absolutely innocent, and we can't prove it. And so we're not able to get them home.
Oh, this is tremendous work that you're doing. And I find it just striking that this interplay between social work and law, which most people often don't put together. How do you see that as a key fit in your role as well?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think in a lot of ways I'm really lucky. I work with lawyers who respect social work, who are happy to have those options available. So it works really well. There's a lot of back and forth, you know, when we're helping folks with, you know, let's say somebody comes home and they have some old traffic tickets that we need to work out, right? That we do have that interplay of being able to have like the lawyer on standby if we need the lawyer, and also the social worker to say, well, like, hold on a second, let's make sure that we, you know, fully explain this to the client. Let's make sure that they're in you know, an okay position to actually work on this. So we work really well together. I think it's really important, and I'm glad to see that. I know that there's a lot of Tulane social work placements in various criminal justice organizations around town, and I think that's huge. I think that the more the legal profession realizes the importance of social work in its field, the better we're able to serve our clients. And I think you see that over and over again.
That's great. So in hearing about that, I'm glad you brought that full circle, because there is a link, you know, because people are not just through the legal system and they're locked up and there's nothing else happens. That's a key role of social workers that our students and Tulane alumni play around the world in the system. So I want to sort of bring it around. Who or what really inspires you right now? It can be in the work that you do as an alumni, just engaging. Where do you find inspiration?
The Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's the most important civil rights movement of our generation, and I think that it is going to be the way forward for this country, or else there will not be a country moving forward.
Oh. So again, Every time you speak, I'm just awe-inspired by how you bring it around, talking about systemic racism, the systems that are broken, and I love that you speak from a very social work, strengths-based perspective about how all of these things need to change, and we will keep ensuring that they do change. And to end systemic racism, I think that is
Yes.
one of the hardest things to change is the systemic systems and things that we've seen that have gone on and are still going on. So I think
Yeah.
that's bringing it again full circle around.
It's also worth noting that all but one of our exonerees or freed clients who were innocent are young Black men. Um, you know, 35 out of 36 were arrested when they were young, and they were Black men, and the system of justice in Louisiana found them to be interchangeable. And so they didn't care that they were wrongfully convicted. They cared that they had a body in prison. And that is the root cause of wrongful incarcerations in this state is racism, systemic racism.
No, well said and well put. I think, the tragedy is we hear these stories over and over again. And I think the more we can get social workers involved in these systems in an equal partner fashion to make a difference, to actually see these injustice, to see the systemic racism, that's where we're really going to move the needle and
Yes.
to get forward. And I'm glad you've highlighted a lot of those things. We have someone that actually is a volunteer in a project that I work in that almost fits everything that you said. They, as a early adult, were convicted of a felony, which again, you talked about marijuana,
Right.
and it to see how it has taken the toll on this individual's life. They can never get a job, a steady job, because it always pops up. And
Right.
when you speak to about it, it's just I did a dumb thing when I was a young adult. It
Yeah.
wasn't nobody got harmed. I, caught with a sizable amount of marijuana that was my own. And the way the system treated this individual literally has created generations of change
Right.
and have negatively impacted his life. And I don't think we often see or talk about those things. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you're able to bring this up because this happens all the time, whether it's in New Orleans or across the country.
Absolutely.
And the more we can raise awareness, I think it's very important. So Angelique Thomas, graduate of the Tulane School of Social Work, out there making a huge difference in our community with Innocence Project New Orleans. We're looking forward to many great things in the future. I thank you as behalf of Dean of the Tulane School of Social Work, but also as Tulane University for representing us and doing the work that social workers do to do work that matters. So
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that, Dean Bordnick.